Right, welcome back. And what we have seen during the past few weeks, and particularly since the beginning of this year, lots of escalation in violence in the Palestinian occupied territories. We've been seeing some of the Israeli strikes on some of the Palestinian occupied territories in Gaza that was preceded by this important strike on Jenin that killed several Palestinians and brought about the escalation in violence and some repatriation from the Palestinian side. And we've seen this Palestinian killing 9 Israelis in response to all the Israeli strikes that has killed since just the beginning of this month or this year 35 Palestinians. Egypt has been calling for a halt to all such violence, particularly the Israeli escalating or inflaming to the situation and all the unilateral action, and already has spoken with the Palestinian side from one side and with the international partners on the other hand, particularly with the U.S. visiting foreign state secretary and the Russian foreign minister. We have seen lots of moves from Egypt in this domain. The situation is very much aggravated and is very much of concerns to the Middle East, particularly the Arab region, and in light of other circumstances and challenges and threats that are really confronted. To highlight the issue, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon, Madam.
Right. The latest escalation in the Palestinian occupied lands and particularly since the new far-right government of the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu took office. How do you read that?
Well, I guess this tension has been premeditated by the Mr. Netanyahu's cabinet, and as you described it, it's the most extremist Israeli cabinet ever since the foundation and the establishment of the Jewish state in 1948. So I guess this tension has been premeditated, and they wanted to send a message to the Palestinians and to the Arab world that Israel has the upper hand on the future of the West Bank. So, of course, the efforts by Egypt, Jordan, with the United States have contributed in, of course, restoring some kind of order and calm in the West Bank. However, we have followed the destruction of Palestinian homes and the mounting Israeli pressures on the Palestinians in their daily lives.
But we have seen this escalation, this new escalation, particularly on starting with this Jenin strike that were followed by several strikes on several areas in the Palestinian occupied territories. This escalation in deeds, plus of course we have heard many of the statements by the cabinet ministers or the Israeli cabinet ministers, some of which were very provocative in words, particularly those who encouraged more settlements in the occupied territories. Why such escalation at this very particular time? What is exactly the what is the motive for that?
Well, we shouldn't look at the recent escalation as an event, a one-time event, and that's it. It's part of an Israeli, long-term Israeli strategy to exercise 100% control over most of the territories in the West Bank, particularly in Zone C. That's the Israeli strategy. And the recent escalation was not the first. And until a further notice, I don't think it would be the last. The basic Israeli policy is to keep the Palestinians destabilized and to use the Israeli confrontation with Iran and with the militias, the pro-Iranian militias in the Arab world as a pretext to postpone any long-term or definitive solution for the Palestinian problem. And in the meantime, the Israeli government under Mr. Netanyahu is going full steam ahead in normalizing relations with Arab countries. And last Thursday, we saw an Israeli delegation headed by the Israeli foreign minister in Khartoum meeting the president of the Transitional Sovereign Council in Sudan. And according to a statement attributed to the Israeli foreign minister, the Sudanese and the Israelis have agreed on a draft peace treaty that would be signed, according to official Israeli sources, once there is a civilian government established in Khartoum. And then there are some press reports that the Israelis, with support from the United States, are working now on normalizing relations with Indonesia and Mauritania. So now we are witnessing a major upheaval in the way the Arab world has been dealing with the Palestinian problem.
Let me take here from what you're saying, Your Excellency, and this means that the Israeli side is moving on Islamic nations to normalize ties with Islamic nations, while at the same time inflaming the situation in the Palestinian territories and putting the Middle East region into fire. What does this mean?
Well, I'm not sure whether the Middle East would be set on fire because of the escalation that we have witnessed in the occupied territories.
Of course,
as I previously,
other reasons, and we'll be discussing the reasons. But please go ahead.
Yes, and this is not the first time that the Israelis have attacked the Palestinians, and it won't be the last, I guess. And the Middle East hasn't changed. It remains the same. On the contrary, the resort of the Israelis to military, to the use of force every now and then, maybe has led some Arab countries to believe that it's better to reach some kind of a peace deal with Israel, and later on they can work with the Israelis to find a solution between commas for the Palestinian problem. And in fact, the Israeli Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago said that Israel is aiming at 99% of normalizing its relations with Arab countries. And once this has been achieved, then Israel would look into holding talks with the Palestinians to find a satisfactory solution to the Palestinian problem here. And this begs the question, the Arab world is facing an Israeli definition of the Palestinian cause, and there is the internationally agreed upon Palestinian cause and how to find or to reach a political settlement according, of course, to the resolutions adopted by the Security Council and the General Assembly of the United Nations. So now when we are speaking about the Palestinian problem, we have to be sure what we are speaking about. Are we speaking about the Arab and the international definition of the political solution to the Palestinian problem, or are we talking about the Israeli scenario of resolving this question?
So far, we have seen lots of Egyptian moves towards the cause and a trial to rise this cause in or with the world powers or the partners in this strategic partners in this cause. But let me here take from what you said before I go into the issue and how Egypt responded with the U.S. Secretary of State or the Russian foreign minister, or even the meeting of the president with the Jordanian king or and the Palestinian president, and all the meetings that have been made with the Palestinian groups. Let me take one thing from what you said here, sir, and yes, indeed, reports came that Mr. Netanyahu has his plan or for the two-state solution, demilitarized with no leadership Palestinian state. How do you view that, and how possible is that, and what could be the international community's response towards such a demand?
Well,
or
first of
a
all,
vision?
The Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu, had previously talked about a Palestinian state back in June 2009. And at the time, he said the parameters of this so-called Palestinian state between commas. And at the time, we called it a Bantustan, the Bantu nation of Palestine. That is to say, a piece of territory which is administratively governed by the Palestinians, but under Israeli sovereignty. And what he said lately doesn't differ much from that. And this is begs the question, would the Arab countries settle for this? I have my doubts. Anyhow, I guess right now, the strategic priority in the region is not, I'm afraid, the resolution of the Palestinian problem, but how the United States and Israel and some of their Arab partners would confront Iran on the one hand, and on the other hand, enlarging what the Americans and the Israelis have called the circle of peace between Israel and Arab and Muslim countries. In this context, I guess the Americans and the Israelis are pushing for normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So these are this is the strategic environment in the Middle East today. And excuse me, speaking about a two-state solution, yes, theoretically speaking, it's welcome. It's important to reiterate the Arab position on the establishment of the two-state solution, but we have to be clear-eyed on what we mean by a Palestinian state in context of this two-state solution.
I have to speak here about the whole situation or the scene, because the Israeli moves are not just on the Palestinian occupied territories and is not escalating the situation in the Palestinian territories. Rather, it is opening lots of fronts, and all are very dangerous on the Middle East, particularly the latest strike that we have seen on some of the Iranian defense sites and were claimed by Israel. So, in fact, there are lots of Israeli moves that are not really understood, or that are escalating the whole situation or inflaming the whole situation in the Middle East. So how do you view such moves? Why are those moves taking place at this very particular timing?
Well, personally speaking, madam, I'm not surprised by the Israeli actions. It has been all around. Those who have followed the Arab-Israeli conflict from various decades ago understand what's going on the ground. And now the Israelis have been emboldened by a tacit American support, despite the fact that the Americans are interested now in reducing tension in the occupied territories. And speaking about the occupied West Bank, let me stress, madam, that we should not, while we are tackling this question, we should not forget that Gaza Strip is still under Israeli siege from 2007. That is for the last 15 years, 2.5 million Palestinians, human beings, have been under siege. Nothing in contemporary or modern history has been like that. And despite that, in September 2020, some Arab countries normalized with Israel without even asking for lifting the siege on the Gaza Strip. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to be transparent, we have to be courageous, and set our conditions in dealing with Israel, whether in the context of no peace or with the context of normalized relations between the Jewish state and Arab countries.
But if we speak about so far Egypt and the moves that it has taken, particularly since the flare-up of the of tension in the Palestinian occupied territories, and we have seen lots of Egyptian moves on from the leadership, our diplomacy to our intelligence. I mean here that all Egyptian institutions have been all working for ending such violence. We have seen even some of the important visits. The U.S. Secretary of State Blinken here to Egypt, and the visit of our foreign minister to Russia is meeting with Lavrov. We've seen lots of Egyptian moves. How do you view those moves and how do you view their outcome or results?
Well, I guess we are managing, actually, we are managing the situation on the ground in Gaza and in the occupied territories in cooperation with the European Union, with the United States, with some Arab countries, with Russia. And that's what I can say on this so far.
Right. What do we need from the international community at this upcoming stage?
Well, I don't think that the responsibility is the responsibility of the international community. It's rather the responsibility of Egypt and the Arab countries. And when these countries deal with this responsibility in a transparent way, I guess the international community would join us. Otherwise, I don't think that the international community right now, taking into consideration COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, fighting inflation, I don't think that the international community is really interested in dealing seriously with the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Remains to be seen, Your Excellency. Remains to be
Thank
seen.
you.
Your Excellency, Hussein Harridy, Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former assistant foreign minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone. Remains to be seen how the international community will respond to the escalation of violence, particularly the Israeli unilateral moves. We'll be awaiting for more response and we'll be updating you in these upcoming weeks. I guess that brings us to the end of this episode. Next Saturday will be another important day. And until then, goodbye.